I am very excited to have Terry Lydon with us today. Terry is the founder and CEO of Proba Solutions, which is the developer of RevView, one of the best solutions I have ever seen to enable automated revenue recognition directly from Salesforce. Terry, thank you so much for being here today.
Anthony, thank you for having me. A pleasure to be here.
So, Terry, before we hop in, I know people watching are going to be really excited to get a demo of RevView and see exactly what it can do for them. But I always love to hear the origin story. So what inspired you to build it? How did you end up putting it together? And how did you end up bringing it to market?
Oh, great. Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, the way it started is I had started another company for training automation and so forth back in 1999 and had since sold it off. But part of that, it was a platform for selling your training offerings and monetizing them and so forth. But with that comes the problem of revenue recognition for things like this type of an event we're doing right now, as well as in-person training, where finance needs to know when that training finished so they can recognize the revenue of a completed class. So we kind of built a little bit of that functionality to just update finance of those kinds of activities. So when we went to start this one, I thought, well, let's make it a little bit more encompassing for revenue recognition, more general than just training, as well as we were kind of enamored with the Salesforce platform being kind of something we could leverage for scalability, security, and all those types of things. So we were zeroed in on the revenue recognition side, but to kind of enhance that and make sure it was something people needed, we went and looked at Salesforce's idea forum and looked up everything around revenue recognition, revenue schedules, that kind of thing. And so probably hundreds of feature requests around that area. So we went and tediously went through every one of those and read them and tried to figure out what they were asking for, what they were looking for in those areas, and then say, let's build something that accommodates as much as we can for those people, because these ideas were like 7 and 8 years old. It didn't feel like Salesforce were going to get to that anytime soon. And we wanted to make it fit the audience where they were, requesting these areas. But we also wanted to make it light as far as the user is concerned, because sales reps already have a lot on their plate. So we wanted to make sure that we didn't put them even more burdensome system in place that they had to do even more to get this data. So that's kind of where it came out. So
That's great. And when did you actually end up taking it to market? When would you consider launch of RevView?
Yeah, we founded the company in 2013, but we were doing other things at that time. So I would say we officially started 2013, but we probably a year later is when we got our first customer. And then I would say, then we started building it up from that point on. So it's about 11 years old, but so lots of iterations from customer feedback, and those kinds of things, because our customers are in many different countries and also many different industries. So the use cases, some of them varied enough that we had to extend the platform to support those kinds of industries. But at this point, we've been probably tested well enough for all kinds of conditions that it plays pretty well in a lot of different environments. So
Yeah, and I think it's a complicated problem to solve too. I've worked in companies where you have a lot of different revenue recognition rules for the different types of products and services that you're bringing to market, and being able to capture all of that in an automated way is always really difficult, especially having access to it in Salesforce, which for a lot of companies is the source of truth of their go-to-market and financial data. Um,
Look,
in your opinion, what's the gap that you're filling that you're not seeing being accommodated by Salesforce or by ERPs or other financial tools? Where does RevView fit into the overall modern go-to-market and finance technology stack?
yeah, great question. I think it's where we fit in is usually after a deal is closed and so forth, that information goes into a finance system and that ends up being that source of truth for the financial information for a company. But before that happens, like you stated, Salesforce many times is that source of truth for all those unclosed opportunities and the future look. Well, what happens to date is sales CFOs, CEOs, and so forth have to pull all that data out of Salesforce, put it into, usually what they do is put into a complex spreadsheet and then model what the revenue picture would look like if these deals closed and everything. And as you can imagine, it puts a burden on teams like sales ops, sometimes rev ops, and so forth to keep pulling this data out on a regular basis. And as soon as they do that, it's automatically out of date because opportunities are constantly changing, like dates changing, products being added, products being dropped, all these shifts that are happening. We attach ourselves to that and recalculate as those things are changing. So where we do is we alleviate all that burden on sales ops / rev ops teams, as well as maybe a finance person that's the poor person that has to put this spreadsheet together and update it on a regular basis. We just say, forget all those steps, go straight into Salesforce, look at it anytime you want, slice and dice it however you'd like. The data's all there all the time and always up to date. So that's kind of where we fit in.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. And I think we have gotten a lot better at getting the sales forecast complete. A lot of methodologies and forward looking of what's going to close, but really rounding out that process by extending it to the revenue recognition forecast. That's
Yeah,
pretty powerful. And I haven't seen anybody do that very well.
yeah, yeah. And that's exactly right. There's a lot of people that do the booking side and they call it revenue. So that's part of the challenge that we have is, sometimes bookings are called revenue. And then cash flow, receiving money is also called revenue. So then you get this confusion in there, but there's really three distinct pieces. There's the bookings, that's the what I'd say is the promise that's made, and then revenue is the fulfillment of that promise. And then cash flow is different. It may align with the revenue recognition, but it may not. It depends on your payment terms. So that's yet another view that's interesting as well.
Yeah, a lot of floating definitions of what revenue is out there. Well, I know you prepared a demo for us today, so I'm really excited to get under the hood, see how powerful the platform can be. And I know our audience is going to be excited to see it too.
Sure, I'll share my screen right now. Thank you. So this is our App Exchange page. So just we're 100% native Salesforce app, so meaning that there's no external parts needed. So everything is self-contained in our customer's Salesforce instance. As far as the app goes, because the data all resides in the Salesforce instance, we can leverage Salesforce's dashboards and reports to create very interesting views of that revenue data in the system. This one is just a dashboard showing the current ARR and MRR, monthly recurring revenue and annual recurring revenue for this demo account. So this says it's for the current month. So every time the month changes, this will have a different view. That's just one sample of data. this is also showing year over year annual recurring revenue. Now, in this case, it's showing it's dropping down, but we need more opportunities in there to bump that up. This is quarter over quarter as well. And then this is showing the annual recurring revenue for the year, but it gives you some really interesting views as to recurring revenue, new sales in here, a downgrade in the system, and a renewal, and a churn in this area. So these tags, because we create all these revenue schedules and so forth, they're easy to tag them and attach those so that you can get this kind of visibility on your real-time ARR and MRR. So examples would be as somebody saying, what if I closed my 90% probability deals? What would my ARR look like if I just did that? And that we allow people to get that kind of view down that line. Now this is just a dashboard, but the reports are also available for different different kind of slices and dices of the data, so that you can see, this is just the revenue by quarter. But as you can see, I'm doing it by probability and then by opportunity name. So these 100% are the ones that are already closed. However, just because they're closed, there's still revenue that comes in at various times after they're closed, because it gets spread out over time. And these are the 90% and so on and so forth. So I'm breaking them down by probability, but you can slice it and dice it any way you'd like down that line. So it's it makes it really easy to look at the data and order it properly. Now,
Terry, do you mind if we go back to that dashboard real quick, because I want to highlight something that is unbelievably difficult to do. This is something at Lean Scale, we put these together manually all of the time, but that ARR, the current ARR waterfall that you have, those waterfall charts are unbelievably hard to do and are typically very, very manual. But this is also how almost every B2B SaaS business runs their business. And this is also what they're typically valued on.
Right.
So, I mean, to have this in a dashboard in Salesforce, I think is really powerful.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and we found that we were originally didn't have that, but we added that a little while ago, and we struggled with how do we do it, because not everything counts for recurring revenue, right? If you have let's say a server and even other types of products like professional services, which you will sell, those don't count in this mix. So you have to filter those kinds of things out. So that's why the difficulty is there. But we figured out we're actually doing the hard part by doing the schedule creation already. So by doing that, we're allowed to, we can tag these types of things so that can filter it out automatically and show you this kind of view very quickly. So that's,
I love it.
Thank you. Yeah, appreciate that. And I think speaking of dashboards, there's another piece that we do help with is we do and what we call annual roll-ups and monthly roll-ups for either all accounts or opportunities. And this is saying, like, this particular fictitious company, ABC Finance, is going to do 457,000 in revenue in 2023, or has done that, and in 2024 it does, 500,000. We automatically slice out all the revenue by years so that you can get a better picture of the real revenue by year for, in this case, it's by account. You can do it by lots of different slices, but it gives you another idea. Is this account revenue-wise growing or shrinking, and those kinds of things, and how have they done with you over the years? So like this is 2022. 3, 4, and so forth. And of course, if new opportunities aren't being added, they'll eventually the revenue drops off because there's no more revenue to come. Even if that might have been closed a long time ago, the revenue kind of persists over time until until it all gets recognized.
This is another thing that is a common request of VCs and founders, especially once you've been in business for a few years, is to perform a cohort analysis.
Yeah.
And I've done a few cohort analyses before. Every single time they're in spreadsheets, every single time they're messy. You're missing data. You're trying to pull data out of your finance system, married up with your CRM. But in this case, you're consistently performing a cohort analysis on your entire book.
Correct. And even though in the beginning of our call, I emphasized the future revenue and all that, but we keep the past revenue too, right? So even the closed deals are still in the system and so forth. So we can give you that overall past, current, and future picture at any time. So that does help. And real quick on the opportunity side of the house. So we try to leverage as many standard fields as we can in Salesforce. We leverage the Salesforce's products as well as opportunities and orders and of course accounts. So based on that information, we can do the math around what is required. So in this case, here's a section we added into the opportunity that basically mimics these products. So as our sales reps add products to the opportunities, we automatically add a matching line here that gives you the revenue picture for each one of those line items. And the way we do it is initially when a customer purchases from us, we help them set up these rules, and these rules get attached to the products. So as the products are added to the opportunities, we just follow the logic of the rules to calculate the revenue that's there. And then based on that, we can give you the picture, even as refined as the line item itself, as to what the revenue looks like, or rolled up to the entire opportunity, or as you saw in the reports and the dashboards, across all opportunities or accounts and so forth down that line. So the cool thing here is sales reps are adding products and removing products from opportunities on a regular basis, changing dates, this and that all the time. As they're doing that, they don't know that we're just kind of attaching ourselves to that work and calculating the revenue as they do that. They don't have to do anything extra. They're already adding products, dropping products, changing dates. That's their normal life. We just kind of join the opportunity and do all the work alongside of it. So it actually is not burdensome to the salespeople at all. They don't even, if you hit this screen, they don't even know you're doing it. So so that's kind of a side benefit down that line. So does this make sense, Anthony?
Absolutely. No, and I like that it's tied to the products. So as you're building out product books and adding new products, which is common every day, you might be adding some new things or new types of products in, that it's consistently taking a look at that and updating its system too.
Right. And then and part of it is you can look at this particular line item, it's 1,000 a month. So this is the recognized 1,000 a month, but then you have the deferred, starts out at 12,000 and then loses 1,000 a month over time for the deferred revenue. till you get to zero, and you're out of revenue. You've recognized all of it. And so this is on a line item basis. On some things like a SaaS thing, it's not super interesting because it's just pretty easy to figure out. However, when you start looking at it at the opportunity level, and you got a combination of different things like hardware, software, maintenance, SaaS, all this kind of stuff, that revenue gets very different looking across time. And as you see here, we're also showing you the weighted for that. And what that means, it's just the calculation based on the probability of the deal. So in this case, this is a closed one deal, so they're going to be the same. But if I was at, let's say 90%, this would be 9,000 instead of 10,000 on the weighted. So that kind of thing. It's for people that
Yeah.
want.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I had a question about some products or services that might be more milestone based. So I actually have a training background as well, and
Okay.
I work for a medical device company. So I'd go out and I'd do a training. They would buy a training, and we couldn't recognize the revenue until I completed the training.
Correct.
So
Yep.
for those type of products or services, is there a feedback loop in the system where I can click a button, say I completed the training, and then it automatically will update the recognition schedule?
Yeah, so there's a couple things. Whoops, that one didn't work. So there's a couple things. One is, you see over here on the side, it says allocated revenue. So in the case of the milestone ones, so let me take a look at one here. Case of the milestone ones, you're right, you don't know things initially, because you're doing particular things at set dates. So professional services, training, those kinds of things fit into that category. So we allow you to set up a kind of a milestone template that if you're pretty standard on what you do, like initially I take 20% of the revenue because I signed an SOW, and then I get another 20% because I did this and did that. So we allow you to set up as many rows as you want, and you can take it down by either percentage, an amount, like a physical, an amount of money, or quantity. So if you're consuming hours as an example, you could say, hey, I don't know what that all is, but I just use 10 hours of that. We'll do the math and figure out how much money that equates to. And then you can attach it to a date or in the system. So then said, okay, that's the contract start date, or it's maybe the training start date, or any of those date fields in there, and get those populated automatically. So if in this case, it's 20 plus 70 is 90 plus another 10 is 100. So percentage wise, we're 100% allocated for this money. But if I were missing any of them, our system would show you're unallocated on that previous screen. So you're going, oh, I need to do something about that. And you can also have reports that show unallocated revenue. What do you need to do, and where is it unallocated, and so forth in the system. Did that answer your question, Anthony?
Yeah, absolutely. No, and it's such a clean way to keep track of those milestones and integrate it into your revenue schedule. That's it's leaps and bounds beyond any other way I've seen it done before.
Yeah, and finally, I mean, besides the milestone-based one, we also have a rule called the blended rule, and what that does is it's similar to the milestone type of thing, but as you can see here, it can accommodate a lot more even complex things, like in here we have a customer that gives away a gift with their subscription, but revenue wise, they have to account for that giveaway because it does have a value to the company. So they have to account for that. So in this case, a couple of them are by physical amounts. Then the last few are by percentage in there. And then if you look at it, this is by a hard date, but this piece is amortized across some dates. And then this one's another single date, and then of course across, amortized across. So now I got on a single line item, I got it all chopped and sliced to a lot of different elements, as many combinations as you want to organize that revenue that way. So it's pretty powerful for that kind of thing. We call it, the rule of rules. so, so it works out. So
That's really impressive. Really, really impressive. And I know it can get so complicated with different types of products, services, aspects of the service. Looks
yeah,
like it can pretty much handle any scenario. I'm sure it's battle tested through
yeah,
customers and your own experience before building, but
yeah.
looks like you have every case covered.
Yes, it's got years of experience with customers in industries such as security, safety, training, construction, media, such as actually magazines, and travel and so forth. So lots of different industries, many different countries as well. So it's been used for many years in all of these conditions. And that's why we built it so that it could be more generic, so it can handle a lot of different situations. And part of that help is we read in the date fields, both the standard Salesforce date fields as well as custom date fields that customers might create, and say, okay, which of these fields do you want to use to start your revenue and end your revenue? And whatever they are, we can just leverage those as they get populated. So, we're not married to a particular set. Like these ones here, start contract date and end contract date are custom fields. So in this case, we're using those to do the revenue calculations.
I have to ask, what's the most complicated case you've seen on the RevView platform here?
Well, I would say there's probably one we have out of Australia that's in the construction business, and they do scaffolding, custom scaffolding for their customers. So they actually have a consultative call with their customers that they charge for, to say how much scaffolding is needed, what's the shape of your building, and all that kind of thing. And then they have another revenue stream that is the shipping of that scaffolding to somewhere. And then another revenue stream is the rental of it at that site for a period of time. And as you can imagine, sometimes things go long. They rarely go short, but they go longer than expected. So they have to track that. And then I forgot one. There's a setup of it, the rental of it, the tear down of it, the transport of it back or somewhere else. All of that are separate revenue streams that are all tracked and changed as these things happen. So,
And they each have different recognition rules of when you can recognize or not.
correct, because transport is very different than renting the item out. So they all have different rules, and as they drag those products in, have dates related to them, so forth, we just track that. So example is, some of the people use on the opportunity, there's an opportunity product line item. They'll put a date field in there that says ship date of, let's say, a piece of hardware. So if when that gets populated, we can use the ship date to say, oh, recognize the revenue because you shipped it, and so forth. And that depends on the company, on how conservative or whatever they are with their revenue rules. But most people are okay with the fact that an item has shipped. I delivered my commitment to somebody because I shipped it. Now, we all know sometimes things get lost and whatnot, but as far as the revenue goes, it's, they use the ship date usually, and, and that works out fine for them.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Well, one last question
Yeah.
I had, major business outcomes. So, I mean, clearly I see a few aspects of having increased visibility, especially seeing your forecasted revenue recognition. I think that can help give CFOs and CEOs a little bit more confidence in maybe fundraising or how they're going to plan their budget. I can see decision support as a massive value here. But I'd love to hear your perspective. Customers you've worked with, what are the major business outcomes that they experience once they implement RevVue?
Yeah, so one of them is obviously the time savings part of it, and of not having to do that extra work on multiple parties' side, and that varies on who ends up doing the work, but it's almost always some finance person that has extra work to do. The other part is, I think, their business outcome is the accuracy of the data, because these opportunities are constantly changing in dates and shifts and so forth. So the fact that they can actually look at it anytime, anywhere, has dramatically improved their estimates of what they're doing and decision making. So like the one I just mentioned about the construction piece, if for instance the customer said, hey, I needed an extra month, that shifts that, but it also shifts another opportunity that needs to start that month. So they need to know that readily, and how they're all connected. So this gives them that real-time visibility down there. And I think the other side is what you brought up earlier, was the visibility to that ARR and MRR as things change and happen, and looking into the future, what would that be if I did X? And that kind of thing really helps that without doing all that extra work on the side and potentially missing stuff. Because as you know, when you export things out and put them all in a spreadsheet, mistakes can happen and so forth. So this helps shrink that kind of setup.
Yeah, from my world as a B2B SaaS operator, I can't imagine how impressive having a waterfall and a cohort analysis readily available in your CRM. If you're fundraising or walking into a board meeting and you have that data at your fingertips, one, of course, having the data for decision making, but also just the level of polish I think it gives you and your company and how tightly you can operate your business. I think it adds tremendous value. It certainly would have helped me in a past life, so I wish I would have met you earlier and could have leveraged your platform. But yeah, I think this is something that any business could really benefit from. And Terry, if people are interested in learning more, or if somebody comes through, our YouTube channel or from our customer base, what's the best way to get a hold of you, and how can they get their hands on the product?
Sure. So our a couple ways. Our website, www.apropos.com is one way, and the other side is through the App Exchange. You can request a demo through there as well. And also my email is my name, terry.lydon@apropos.com. So any of those means we're reachable that way. So and so I really appreciate your time, Anthony, and the questions you asked were great. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Terry. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much for giving us a peek under the hood. This is really, really valuable. I know our audience, I know our customers are going to be really interested in taking a look. And we'll also make sure to put your information in the link on our YouTube video and send it out as well, so people can get a hold of you. Terry, thank you so much, and hope to talk again.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it. Take care.